Good evening. The meeting of the Monroe Township Board of Education will come to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May we have a roll call, Mr. Gorski?
Mrs. Koloponowicz.
Here.
Mr. Chiarella. Mrs. Antelis. Mr. Braverman.
Here.
Mr. Kaufman.
Here.
Mr. Klein.
Here.
Mr. Leary.
Here.
Mr. Masters. Here. Mr. Tesler.
Here.
Mrs. Ferroni.
Here.
Madam Board President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. In accordance with the provisions of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law, the Monroe Township Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted October 7th, 2011, 1 at all schools, 2 the Home News Tribune, 3 the Cranberry Press, and 4 filed with the clerk of the municipality. At this time, we will go to number 5 on the agenda, the student board members' reports.
Good evening. There's still no immediate updates for the school, so as soon as they come in, we'll be sure to report them.
Okay, that was nice, short, and sweet. Thank you. This time we will have a presentation on the iPads, and I will turn this over to Dr. Gorman.
Good evening, everybody. We'd like to make a two-part presentation today, and we'd also like to provide you some literature to keep you in the loop as far as giving you information on how our implementation plan is moving, some research that was conducted on usage of mobile technology and its effect on student learning, our plan for professional learning for our staff members, and our long-range plan for this year that extends beyond. Also, on this paper that was provided at the front, and it'll be on our website as well after tonight, there's a link to our new website that talks specifically about the initiative. It's a pretty powerful learning tool. It's being constantly updated. Mr. Goodall is providing updated blogs on it, news releases, and current research and articles to just give you more of the why and the how towards the initiative. At this point, I'm really happy to introduce a New Jersey educator. Bill Sang Jr. is a science teacher at Lenape High School, and we provided this bio for you also in paper if you haven't gotten it. He is a crusader for advancement of lifelong learning with mobile technology, and he happens to be an Apple Distinguished Educator. Has no connection with Apple, but Apple has a program that distinguishes outstanding educators throughout the nation, and Bill is one of those outstanding educators that was actually acknowledged and recognized by the company. He's going to give you an overview of some of the possibilities as we move forward that can be done with these mobile devices. He should, I'm confident that he's going to wow you. And then we wanted to put out the possibilities as we move closer towards next week when our students will actually receive their iPads, and we'll take the next step in this journey towards higher levels of student learning and engagement. So, Bill, thank you for coming.
Thank you, everyone. It's an honor to be here. And thank you for inviting me. I think I've got to just hit this power button and we should be good to go.
You might want to try to talk in the ear.
Sure, absolutely. Should I hold it? Great. So there's a little story I tell my students at the beginning of the year, and anytime I talk or give presentations, I hope you'll humor me for a couple minutes anyway, but there's a little story about one of the greatest minds, arguably, that ever lived. It involves Einstein. And the story goes that back in the 1920s or 30s, Einstein was being interviewed by a newspaper reporter. And that reporter happened to run out of time, and he said, "Mr. Einstein, could I have your phone number, your home phone number, so that I could continue this conversation later?" And, this is a really kind of like forward kind of thing for him to ask Einstein, but Einstein walked over very calmly to the table, proceeded to open up a phone book, and looked up E for Einstein, found his name in the phone book, wrote down his phone number, and handed it to the reporter. And the reporter was dumbfounded, I guess for two reasons, because Einstein gave him his home phone number. I mean, if I had, asked President Obama for his home phone number, I doubt he would give it to me. But then likewise, I think mostly just because Einstein actually had to look up his phone number. And so he asked him, "Mr. Einstein, you have one of the most brilliant minds in the history of mankind. Why don't you know your own phone number?" And Einstein just replied very, very shortly that, "Why would I store information up here that I could just as easily look up here?" So I take this to heart. As Dr. Roman so very nicely introduced me, I'm a science teacher from Lenape High School down in Medford, just outside of Philadelphia, about 15 miles. And these are just some images of my school and my classroom. And one of the overarching objectives in my classroom is to teach students to be extremely resourceful. So in other words, use the tools that are given to them very, very appropriately and in a very, very ethical kind of fashion. So let's face it, the students that we have here today, my students, your students, when they get older, they're not going to carry a backpack of books around with them to be resourceful. They're going to have a mobile device in their pockets or some other kind of device that hasn't been invented yet. So we need to teach them how to use those tools very responsibly and also in a fashion that's going to benefit them and ensure that they're lifelong successful as, just learners and very successful in life regardless. So what have I been doing? I've been running an iOS pilot program in my school. I'm actually sort of like the black sheep. There's nobody else doing it. But nonetheless, there's some really, really obvious things that you can do with iOS devices. There's Safari on there, which means that it opens up the World Wide Web, which is incredible. All our students have a student email address, which makes communication between teacher and student very, very effective, very simplistic, and it's also incredibly secure. And then in terms of just keeping them on task with a calendar and things like that, in terms of assignments, it's worked out really, really wonderfully and beautifully. But these are some of the simple things that we just sort of take for granted. I'm hoping I can show you some more things that are a little bit more exciting. I use Google Forms almost all the time. I'm nearly paperless in my classroom, which is tremendous. So by adding Google Forms to a web page, I have mrsang.com registered. And the students just go to that page for whatever the day's activity is. I have things on a blog, and I'm just sort of like the launch pad. They just pop in on there, and I actually do a lot of my lab activities paperless. So with the form, I'm able to get them to input data all together, and then ultimately, what we wind up with are real-time graphs that we can kind of look at and share at the end of the activity. So rather than having to manually enter everything on the paper, come back the following day and make this a sort of laborious process, they can see real-time data instantly, which is pretty cool. So, not bad, not bad. This is my classroom. And what I've really set to do is to get away from me being the front end of the instruction and instead use the devices to kind of guide the learning. And what ultimately we wind up doing is the students actually create their own textbooks. So am I out to sort of drop the textbook entirely? Kind of. On some level. The textbook companies don't like to hear this. However, my theory is the information's out there. If we teach them very, very ethical and responsible ways to search the internet, how to validate websites, how to validate information, they can work together to actually create their own content. As long as it follows the core curriculum standards, we're in wonderful shape. And if they're becoming authors, they can add things and make it extremely relevant to themselves. So I'm going to show you how I do that, but what's really cool about them making their own textbooks is because I got to tell you how jealous I am that you're going to be one-to-one with iPads because it's phenomenal. They can carry these textbooks around with them. They authored the textbooks. They made the textbooks. Their peers made the textbooks. I moderate what goes on there, and I review it. But it's just phenomenal because they know how to talk to each other in ways that I can't even imagine. I'm not terribly old. I'm 40 now. But nonetheless, my students come in, and they're talking in ways that I really can't necessarily relate to. peers can, sort of articulate things really, really well to each other, and I think that's what's so incredibly powerful. The EPUB has, which is one of the export features that we use, is phenomenal because it allows students to actually tap on a word once the students have created it, and we'll give them a dictionary definition. And then they can annotate on the sidelines and write their own notes also, too. So it's pretty phenomenal. It's a really powerful tool. What I really, really like is the collaborative kind of things that we can do with this. So if I have a student, say, doing a drawing, this is a really, really simple sketch. He's just using whiteboard. He's just kind of doing a drawing of a mountain. But it becomes more powerful if I get a group of students to do a group of drawings that relate to a particular sketch that I want them to create. So for this sketch, we're doing the layers of the atmosphere. And each of the students is assigned a specific layer of the atmosphere. And they're responsible for coming up with text that is very, very easy for them to understand, and then also creating a drawing. So then ultimately, after they're all done their drawings, we take all the drawings, export them into iPhoto, and then ultimately, we put them all into one document using Pages on a Mac. So it's really, really cool. You can get them all working on that one drawing, and then you can import that into their own textbooks. I like it a lot. The students really like it a lot, too, because they feel like they're actually part of the learning process rather than somebody just delivering it to them in a book or on like a handout. This is one of my favorite activities that we do. I call it Photabulary, which is a combination of photography and vocabulary. And generally, I think one of the biggest challenges I have as an educator is literacy. My students struggle not with necessarily being able to read, but they don't know what the words mean. And Earth Science is a very vocab-driven class, and that's primarily what I teach. And so normally what we do is we say, okay, here's a list of words, go look them up in the back of the book. The iPad and the iPod Touch has enabled us to use an app called Type Drawing. So what I'm doing in the background is demonstrating how type drawing works. And students can take an image that they find from the internet. In this case, we used an image from the USGS website of a geyser. And using their fingers, they can actually add words on top of the image to define what that particular word is. So the steam is rising up out of, this is Old Faithful, the steam is rising up out of there. And then I'll change it over so that you can see the word geyser written down at the bottom, and then I'll actually add pressure down there with another little bit of red too. And the notion is the idea is that if they all get together, and they each have, say, one or two words, instead of just looking the things up in the back of the book, they're creating images that can help them from a visual perspective really understand what these words mean, because they're animating them, and they're adding, just text on top that really kind of helps with the comprehension. Kids love it. It's really, really cool. So if we take all these images, put them all together, they become one master PDF, and again, that goes back onto the child's device. So they created their own photo glossary. Photabulary is what I call it. So it goes on for a little while, but we can just kind of skip through. I think I actually have some of the results here so that you can kind of get a better sense for what it looks like. So that was where we started, and it winds up looking like that with the pressure underneath, the steam rising up, and then it's a geyser. I mean, when students read the word, they don't see the image, it doesn't necessarily always click. Another example here would be, of wind turbines. All right, it's really cool to see a static image. They can look it up online. But when they add the text to it, the wind kind of going in, you can see the electricity coming down the main tower, and then, wind turbine and the electricity kind of going out along the grid line. So it's kind of useful. And then likewise, the concept of soil layers and leaching and infiltration, and minerals kind of being pulled down and then leaching down into the different layers. So when we start to add up all these things, it's really cool what else you can do. I mean, you can add an image of a very famous person and put their whole biography on top of it. Really, it's not just applicable to science, and that's what I really love about this. You could really use this in almost any class. So these are just some images that my students actually created. Some of them better than others. But nonetheless, it's really pretty cool what happens as you go through the year and they start to refine their skills in this. And then they really kind of take it personal to sort of create really, really a great one for all their peers to kind of get into. So this is a video that I made. If we have time, I guess we'll show it. It's only about 3 minutes.
The new world skill isn't for them to look something up in the book and then write it down on a piece of paper. The real world skill is and how to validate that information. We're putting that right into the hands of the students and saying, here, you be in charge of your own learning, and you go out and find the information, validate it, and make it relevant to you. Design my classroom to be a collaborative workplace that fosters creativity and critical thinking. There's a Mac Mini at every table, and each student has an iOS device, which serves as a research pod that reports back to the communal desktop Mac. With other Apple support, it's the perfect collaborative learning environment. By giving them specific roles and project style kinds of things that we've been doing, really allows them to shine in a differentiated instruction kind of thing. So let's use an example here, play tectonics. Every table has one specific plate boundary. Let's just say it's continental to continental margin. The researchers find out what it is about continental margin that makes it different from others. They find out specific examples, what sorts of features are built by it, then they find images to back things up, and they are starting to create their own chapters. Now, this is where it gets really cool because they're doing this on the iOS devices, and then we're using an application called PasteBot. And PasteBot's a clipboard manager. They find content on the iPod Touch. By tapping on the clipboard manager on their iPod, it can go directly into a Pages document. So the editor will start to kind of filter out the unnecessary bits and pieces and start to pull it together. And then when they're finished, they have a real document that they created together, and we've got 6 different ones that we can then compile together and have one master EPUB that goes back out to them on their devices. And they've got a chapter that they just created as a class together. So we don't just limit it to the standardized textbook modes of delivery. It's whatever they want to do. Use Sketchbook X to do their own drawing of it, or they can use iMotion and actually create a little claymation video of a plate collision. The students learn best from themselves. I have to constantly remind myself that they're not going to understand every word that I say, but they understand their creative means of expression. So if they're putting that out towards their peers, they're going to learn a whole lot more. My name is Bill Sang, and I empower my students in collaborative environments with iOS devices.
Yes, sir.
I really appreciated your presentation. I'm an electrical engineer, and I think graphically, and I can demonstrate that right here. But I think in order to have an effective presentation, you have to have a list of acronyms. You are throwing them at us like you're trying to drink water from a fire hydrant.
I do. I tend to talk really fast and very a mile a minute. I apologize for that.
No. I meant that in the sense of quality improvement. I'm not trying to be a badass and throw rocks at you.
That's all right. I got a hard head. I can take it. So to kind of summarize here, there's a lot of content being created by the students. I mean, there's PDF files, there's, EPUBs, there's all kinds of collaborative drawings. Where do we catch all this? Usually I have a hard drive that's set up to a communal Mac in the room, and they have like a Dropbox folder where they can just drop it off. And then I can assign one student to sort of like compile all this stuff. And then it gets posted on a blog where I can email it them directly. And iBooks is great because it's just sort of like the catch-all. Anything that's getting created by them, they can drop into iBooks. And since if they are one-to-one, they can carry it around with them. So this really becomes their quintessential backpack. It can open pretty much any content that you throw at it, and it's pretty incredibly powerful. I'm going to, should I keep going? I could talk about this all night.
Do we have more to discuss?
It's a small second part. Give it a quick sort of finish.
Okay, sure. Well, let me skip over the maps-based investigation. This is actually much more of a sort of like teaching kind of thing that can happen with, I'm kind of stuck in this video. And, well, we're walking through it anyway. The notion is that the teacher can use the iPad as a very, very powerful instructional tool. So in this particular instance, I showed a video and the video related to some non-point source pollution. And what I asked the students to do, I actually just videoed it right outside of my house. I pulled up the map where I live, not really showing them exactly where I live. So it's on the iPad, but it's also on the screen and the projector in the front of the room. And I use an app called Doceri, and there's some similar apps out there called AirSketch, and then there's also one called, name's escaping me right now, but Doceri is great because it becomes an interactive whiteboard. So we don't need to necessarily have an interactive whiteboard at the front of the classroom anymore. The iPad, as I pass it around, the students can draw and annotate over top of the notes, and then it becomes this really, really cool investigation that they sort of like look into to see where the pollution is coming from. So passing around the iPad is an incredibly powerful tool. You know, if you've got a whole bunch of them in there, I think actually that you can connect multiple Doceri devices to the same desktop at once, which is really amazing. The students can actually draw up on the screen at the same time that you're presenting anything. And in this case, they're passing it around, and they're able to kind of really take part in the entire lecture really, really well. So what am I seeing in terms of results? Because everyone always asks this. The students are remarkably much more engaged. They know what to do when they come in the class. A lot of people, you know, are really, really concerned about being distracted by the devices because you've got internet right in front of you. You've got all these games, especially if they're taking them home. They can load up all kinds of things. It's about classroom management. If you manage the classroom appropriately and they know what to do exactly when they come in and you've got something for them to do, they're going to take off with it, and they're going to be really excited to be in the class too. Additionally, you know, instead of doing this, they're doing this. They really are. They're taking their notes. You know, you get a couple kids every now and then are doing what they shouldn't be doing, but you could argue that about any classroom, really. You know, they're going to be sitting there scribbling or passing notes to one another or doing something else. More focused on the lecture, you know, instead of me being up there, I'm putting the lecture inside the devices. We flip the classroom all the time. This is something, you know, that's really big in education now too. The notion of actually posting your lectures online, having them go home and watch that for homework, and then coming back in and just helping them with whatever their homework was. So we do that quite often. And then also, you know, their eyes are on the prize, so to speak. They're far more responsible. And I wish I had one of these devices when I was in high school, because I think I would have been on time with practically everything. But ultimately, they're far more resourceful, and they're using the tools in ways that they really, really, truly should be. So if Einstein had the benefit of the iPhone at one point in time, I have no doubt that he would have been using the Contacts app to give out his phone number instead of using that phone book. But I think that's about. I could show you more, but I think we're good. All right. Any questions? Okay, great.
Thank you.
Bill, thank you very much for coming. I know you did this on your own time, and we really appreciate your effort to come down here and share some of the things, cool things that you're doing. And hopefully, maybe we'll partner up with your school and we'll set up some collegial conversations, which will be awesome. Thank you.
iPad pen pals.
Appreciate it.
The second quick part of our presentation, because of some of the reactions that we've gotten, that we want to sort of give you some more positive information. There's another handout that gave you information that the district is taking to secure the iPads. Dr. Hamilton and myself and Mr. Washington met with the police department the other day in a very positive conversation on how we can partner with each other. And what I'd like to do now is have one of our technicians from the high school, John, come here and actually give you a quick demonstration on how to use the Find My iPad application. He'll tell you the key to it is, as soon as you know that it's gone, let somebody know so we could locate it and get it back or tell you where it is. So I'll turn it over to you, John.
Thank you very much. Hi, my name is John. I'm a workstation specialist here at the high school. I'm here to just show you the main features, security features that we took in order to keep our iPads secure from the students. We disabled the features of them, allowing them to install applications or download applications, as well as uninstalling. Also, with the Find My iPad app, we can locate the iPad no matter where it is, as long as it's online. And also, we can lock it, and we can also swipe it. If you have your own personal information on there, clear everything out. I'm going to turn on an iPad here. And what I'm going to do is, actually, I'm going to log into the website that we use from Apple. in order to lock it out. The student's iPad I have here is Michael Harrigan, so therefore what I'm going to do is we're going to go in our database and locate where he is, and we're going to pull up our website. And then once we log into the website, we have our, I'll bring it up after so I can show you what the map looks like. And once I locate the iPad, I go to the student's name, and I will be able to lock it once. And also I can send a sound to it as well. So I'm going to display a message saying that this iPad is lost or stolen. Please call the number on the back and have it returned to Monroe Township High School. So I'm going to send that. And as you can see, it pops right up on the iPad. As well as I can lock it, so you need a passcode in order to get into it. So anybody that goes into it, they won't be able to steal it. So that's one of the main features, and then I'll also show you what it looks like for us when we locate the iPad. And that is what it looks like. And there we are, right in the corner of Schoolhouse and Prineville Road. And also you can do a hybrid view, so we can even get more into detail and see. And I'm pretty sure that's a library right there. So that's pretty much a quick overview on how Find My iPad works. So if the iPad comes up stolen or missing, please report it right away. If you go onto our website, you scroll all the way to the bottom, you go to feedback or questions, and you can email us and just let us know it's reported stolen so we can locate it as soon as possible. And that's pretty much it.
John, quick question. Is Michael here? Who is our student in the back? Mr. Goodall? Mr. Higgins? That's not Mr. Aaron. We have some students that are very excited about this initiative and want to take a leadership role and have told us the services that they'll provide for us in the learning process and anything else we need to do regarding this technology. So that's a quick overview, and we'll be coming to you every month showcasing and giving you different aspects and bits of this initiative as it grows, as we showcase success stories, provide data for you, and anything relative based on your input to us and our output to you guys. So thank you.
Is there any questions in regard to the iPads from the members of the Board of Education? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the public forum. If anyone wishes to speak to the agenda, please come to the microphone and give your name and address for the record, and all other items that are not on the agenda will be saved for the second public forum, and this will include any questions that you might have in regard to the iPads.
I'm Notestein, 15 Nathaniel Street. Since the closed session is open-ended, there's really no way for the public to know how long you'll be in closed session. With that in mind, I want to ask some questions pertaining to the iPod, because I may not be able to wait until
Yes, you can ask questions in regard to the iPads.
My concern actually is also if we could actually have a closed public portion right before the closed session, and then another one after it to address anything that happened in the closed session would make more sense. I don't think it's fair to the public that we have to wait around open-ended for a public session after the
Okay.
closed session.
Mr. Leary will save your comments until other board business. This is a public forum.
I have a question with regards to the iPad, or the iPad. We're all familiar, anybody who's worked with Apple, about jailbreaking either iPods or iPads. How does that affect the capability to locate an iPad after it's been stolen? Maybe you might know that.
Dr. Gorman?
As far as jailbreaking the iPad or iPhone or any iOS device, it is still possible to locate the device. Currently, the main concern is if the student restores the iPad and completely clears it out, which that is something that we're working on, and I believe there's a new update coming out that will allow us to lock it and disable that and require a password in order to restore it. So that is something that we're trying to work on, and that's the reason why once you find that it's missing or
Speed.
right, just to, as soon as you know, just please let us know so we can try to locate it as soon as possible. And
Actually, our conversation with the police is, we're going to call you, and it might be at odd hours, and we said, no problem, we're there for you. But access, and the second the notification on any vandalism, and, you know, when we had that conversation, we're talking about the exception and not the norm. And they even said, you know, we're talking about 5%, and 5% is going to exist on everything and anything. But we're doing the best that we can to make sure that the 5% is dissuaded from engaging in that activity.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm all for this. I'm just, you know, we're trying to look for holes in this system, obviously, and I was this age at one point too, and sometimes it's doing things that you're not supposed to be able to do with technology that makes it so enticing, and that's a concern. I'm also had a question for Mr. Sang regarding, is there any integration with the whiteboards? One application that I see that would be incredible is to actually transmit what's being written on the whiteboard to the iPads in real time, so that at the end of the lecture, they basically have all the notes on their iPad that they could go home. And I see that actually even being more productive than even just recording the entire lecture. Is there any way to integrate the whiteboards currently?
Absolutely. Actually, his demonstration talked about that interactive whiteboard, and later on, as we evolve, you're going to see enormous savings, we believe, to this. So what could have been done on a whiteboard, which is an interactive tool, can now be done through a simple app, and all of these in a very probably free app. So yes, the answer is 100% yes. And the possibilities from what even William said and anyone we've talked to is that the sky's the limit, and it's not a cookie cutter. It's how the kids and the teacher are driving it, which will eventually, and the professional development they're receiving to create and share that content. That's the foundation of it.
I mean, I realize Monroe is an early adopter of this technology. Unfortunately, early adopters tend to pave the way for the people down the road that did not, determine to be an early adopter. As far as textbooks are concerned, has that technology caught up yet? For example, I know I read Wired magazine, which is a fantastic interactive magazine on the iPad that you can click on things, and if they're talking about an equation, you click on it, you can see the equation being solved. I envision that for textbooks down the road. Are there any textbooks that we're looking at currently that has that interactive feature?
Want me to take that one? Okay. As timing would have it,
Mr. Kaufman?
and you, Tom, are not a plant, you've not been paid for this endorsement in any way, is that correct,
That I'll admit
sir?
to.
Okay. We're going to be reporting tonight as part of the curriculum update that we're going to be piloting with Pearson this year, I believe, right? Our first textbook free of charge. It's going to be it's a Algebra
1 series.
Algebra 1 series textbook that's going to be saving us about $40,000 just for this instance alone. We would have liked to have been able to make it completely free, but we actually have to buy the series for the middle school as well. So they still, because they don't have this yet, they still need to have a physical textbook. So we'll report later on some hard numbers, but the bottom line is we're going to be seeing the benefit of that this year for this series of textbooks, and there's just more to come. The thing of it is, I think I wouldn't want to be a textbook publisher, because with the advent of the ability for students to start being able to generate their own text and be able to come up with this content, we talk about all the time, math is math is math is math. It really hasn't changed. And as we're being able to develop a lot of this content, whether it's staff-based development or it's student-based development, if we can't find or we can't negotiate with textbook vendors moving forward to where we're happy with the numbers that they're giving us, we really have to start thinking about, well, what percentage of the stuff do we really need from them anymore? Because the content is just going to continually grow. In addition to the materials that we'll have that we have to meet our immediate need, like this e-textbook for Algebra 1. We gotta go there. But as the course and the content builds, and it's all, for as far as our conversations have always been, the real money or the buyback to the district and the technology isn't really in the iPads, because they have a shelf life of how long they're gonna last. Where we're really betting the bank in is the content that we're gonna be creating that can be reused from class to class, year to year, and, you know, who knows, maybe at some point in time, we have enough information here where you talk about being a trailblazer, if you will, where we have enough content where we can sell it to other districts. So, you know, we're gonna kind of leave this whole doorway open because it is new and revolutionary, and I've always said, no, nod their head, it's all really in the content. That's where our focus is, and the iPad is a tool to get us there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, we're going to hold...
Monroe, I take grave exception. You allowed him to speak, and you stopped me. And I was going to provide very useful information, namely that we are under court order from Judge Wog as to how we hold closed sessions.
Thank you, Mr. Leary.
Could you please elaborate, because I'm not talking about the closed session. I'm talking about the public portion before the closed session and after.
And we'll take that under advisement.
Right,
And
but
we'll
it's
look
not
at-
what he's...
Yes, yes.
It has nothing to do with the closed session. The closed session is perfect.
Right, thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Madam Chairman, I'd ask leave for the same reason the gentleman before me asked leave. I come here to praise one of your employees who did a very amazing job in negotiating a settlement of a problem that could have led to a disaster. My name is Rod Kober. I'm the president of the Whittingham Homeowners Association. I reside at 63 Westboro Lane. We had a disaster in the making when there was a duplication of scheduling for one of the for the new venue. We have a show that's scheduled for the 15th, October 17, I believe. And I want to say that had it not been for Mike Gorski, there would be no show. We would have had to cancel. It would have been a tremendously expensive thing. Mike must be one hell of a negotiator. I didn't do the negotiation with him. Ed Goldman, who's the head of our entertainment program, did, and he had nothing but praise, and I want to pass that praise on to you. Ed can't be here tonight because his wife, unfortunately, is critically ill, but in any event, please note in your book of life that this guy is one special person.
Mr. Gorski is sitting right over here, and I'm sure he's heard every word that you said.
I saw you stop the clock, by the way, when he was talking.
You have 2 minutes left. I appreciate the comments, but they really belong to the entire business office staff and the benefits coordinator and the assistant business administrator, who all work together to reschedule your event due to the timing problems that arose. But thank you for your kind words, and you know, the school's philosophy has always been that the schools belong to the community. They're able to be used, and there's policies on that posted to the website. And you know, we appreciate working with you.
Anyone else from the public?
Hi, I'm Marilyn Cashman, 35 Nelson Avenue. I have 3 children in the school system, and I do have some questions about the iPads and some other things. We were told that we could pay a $49 insurance fee, and that if one iPod gets destroyed, dropped, which I'm sure it will, they get that iPad replaced. If they break a second one, though, we're responsible to pay $540 to replace a second iPad. I don't want my children to have iPads. I have not bought them an iPad. I bought them each, my older ones have an iPod, and they both broke them. So they didn't get them replaced. I don't understand why it's not my decision whether my child has an iPod or an iPad. It will get broken in my house, and I'm being told basically $49 insurance for the first one. I can't pay the $49 for a second one for insurance. And if it gets broken, I'm then responsible for $540 or $39, is that correct?
I believe it's $538 for a replacement.
My children don't even want the iPads. They prefer to have books. We haven't been told what textbooks are going on this, what benefit they're going to have from this, other than, I don't know, the teachers are going to have a cloud to communicate with them. It's ridiculous information, nothing coming home, and my kids don't even want this. And I'm pretty sure most of the parents in this community feel the same way. So why is it that there's an insurance fee for one iPad, but if they get a second one, they can't pay the insurance fee and get the second one replaced, so then it's not insurance. There's no insurance policy that came back to my home saying, this is what it covers exactly. And my kids don't even want these. They would rather actually have a book. So who has the right to give my kid an iPad?
Okay, I'm going to have Dr. Gorman respond to that.
Okay. So I totally respect and I hear what you're saying as a parent of an 8-year-old, 11-year-old, and 13-year-old boy. All three of them are boys.
Okay.
And iPads and iPods lost and misplaced all the time. To give you a short answer to what if once you see them and you still can't get past that, it's a learning, that the benefits of learning, which is what our intent is.
But what's going to be on it for them
Right,
to learn
I'm
from?
gonna, so, when we were looking at this initiative, it was laptop in a one-to-one environment, because we see in colleges and universities that people get laptops and they use that and they house and they keep all their work on it, or they're able to send it somewhere, or the iPad. The iPad really does anything and everything a laptop can do. The beautiful thing about it is there's no moving parts, so there's nothing really to break. The case we believe is a very secure case. I can go like that, and it's still okay, even though I don't recommend that be common usage of it. Worst case scenario is if you go through the replacement and you just don't want to go there to the next level, then we can provide you with an option to possibly communicate and talk to us, and then your child can pick up, get their iPad when they enter the school building and check it out at the end of the day. So it stays in the building, and you don't have to worry about those things that will cost you possibly $538. The fee is a protection fee, so we can keep these in the best possible shape, so when we refresh and get the newest technology for our kids, and in 2 years or 3 years. So the spirit of it is to keep these in the best shape so we could get the next best product for our kids to learn. That's why we want to keep them as good as we can. The article I gave you here, if you get a chance to just look at it, either written or check out the website, it talks about one of the first quantitative studies, a real study that measured if kids are learning, if what we're giving them is really making a difference. And the thing that they talk about is they are scoring 25% higher on transfer learning tests, and that's a big deal because higher order thinking, the ability to work together, the ability to construct knowledge in different contexts are important skills that transfer to the workplace. And so the spirit is to make our kids as competitive with every kid in New Jersey, to be prepared to go to college. Whether they go to college or not, that's their choice. But we want the best, and we want to be competitive with every kid out there. And the beauty of the iPad is that it can individualize the learning for your student. So what I'm interested in might be a little bit different than what Mr. Tesler is interested in. And the possibilities like Mr. Seng produced are just touching the surface on the possibility of learning and teaching. Having said that, my job isn't to convince you, I know if you're there,
I'm
then
not
you're there.
convinced, and I don't mean to cut you off,
That's
but I'm going
okay.
to tell you that for the last 14 years that my daughter's been alive, we've all been told, keep your kids off the internet, keep them off Facebook, keep them off Facebook or MySpace. They're not allowed to have their phones at school, and yet somebody here decided they can give my child a computer that they will have at their own access. I have 2 computers at my house, a laptop and a desktop. They're both in my kitchen and living room where I could see them. Nobody here has the right to give my kid a laptop that she's going to have wherever she goes.
So then you could take that option that I explained to you, and you could refuse it.
And then what happens with her schoolwork that's on the clouds?
Well, she could go from your home to the cloud also. It
So
doesn't
it's
matter.
it's accessible through regular internet access?
Yes.
So she can come home and go on the computer that I can watch her and access her schoolwork, her calendar, any textbooks that might end up being on it? I know, my time's up.
Yes.
So she doesn't really need the iPad. She can do this all on the computer.
That's not
at
what I
home.
said. I think there will be uses that are coming all the time that will lend to her doing her own thing with some of the options in there. But there are workarounds for it if that's what your interest is.
Yeah, I don't think anybody has the right to give my child an iPad at all that has internet access and no parental controls at home, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now you've heard what I have to say.
Okay, thank-
Absolutely, and we welcome it. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public?
Good evening, I'm Renee Hayter. I live at 11 Regent Drive, and I took a little bit of exception to the previous comments. I'm going to speak from my perspective. I haven't taken a poll of all the Monroe Township parents, but from my perspective, this iPad implementation is the most innovative thing that this district has done in the 20 years that I've lived in the town. And the key thing that was mentioned was about content. My daughter and my son has been using textbooks that sometimes are 5 years old, 8 years old, and the content is constantly evolving. So, and in many classes, she'd have a textbook, but she'd be getting handouts, dittoed pages from other textbooks. And as it was said, the whole issue of opening the whole wide world web of content to these students makes sense. And even if some students don't want to do it now, the reality of the situation is in 3 years or 2 years or 1 year, when they wind up in college, they're going to have to be doing the same exact thing. My son's a sophomore at a university, and he doesn't really buy too many textbooks because everything's online and everything is accessed through Blackboard and through online webinars, and he has online courses in college. I mean, this is the future. And to not want to move in that direction because you can't control what people are going to do, I mean, that's part of the whole learning process, is teaching these students how to control what to do and teaching the parents how to do that. And so I just wanted to speak up and say, from my perspective as a parent and from the small group of people that I interact with, we are totally and completely in support of this. We would like more information about what is going to be on the iPad and how we can kind of control and monitor it, but in no way, shape, or form should the students be held back because there's concerns about of these things, because if students don't want it, then they can use it in the library and they can choose not to take it. But this is the best thing that this district has done in a long time, and I applaud the effort. And I know it's a risky and challenging endeavor, but it's a wonderful thing, and it'll have positive benefits for years to come for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Okay, seeing no one, we will go to the approval of the minutes for the Public Board of Education meeting of July 20th, 2011. Motion and a second. Mr. Kaufman? Is there a second? Mr. Tesler?
In the closed session.
No, we'll do one at a time. Any questions in regard to the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Mr. Klein and Mr. Braverman. And the approval of the minutes for the closed session meeting of July 20th, 2011. Motion and a second.
So moved.
Mr. Kaufman, and anyone would like to second the meeting?
Second.
Mr. Masters. Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Mr. Klein, Mr. Braverman. Okay, at this time, we'll go to the superintendent's report recommendations with Dr. Hamilton.
Good evening, all. Before we get into the report, just want to share a little information with you since we last spoke. Mike Gorski and I met with Senator Greenstein this week to present some proposed legislative changes that we believe would help to resolve the tuition matters between Jamesburg and Monroe. We're confident that she would be able to introduce such legislation that would create a win-win situation for both districts, and more information on that will be forthcoming. We also discussed with her our request to get additional assistance and follow up on our previous meeting with the state officials regarding the changing of funding formula so that Monroe does not continue to get the short end of the stick when it comes to the distribution of state aid, and she has granted her commitment to do so, and we'll be meeting with her again as a follow-up to that meeting. Also want to give the board an update on the EE4NJ grant. It's coming along very nicely. It involves a lot of work, primarily on the part of our district administrators. We do have to commend the committee for getting so much done in such little time, and I want to publicly acknowledge and thank MTEA. We have initially crossed the hurdles that we faced on the onset of this project regarding the collaboration. I think we're in a good place. Dr. Gorman and I attended the Golf Classic event at Forest Gate last week, and later on in Mr. Gorski's report, you'll be getting asked to accept checks that we received as donations for the Sparks program from 2 different organizations that were present there. And lastly, as you all know, I was presented with the Distinguished Educators Award by the NAACP, and I wanted to thank the community. So many people called or wrote me to extend their congratulations, and I want to give a special thank you to the board for a very impressive full-page ad in the Journal. Thank you very much. And moving on to the superintendent's report, the student enrollment data is enclosed, and you can see from last year to this year, we have an additional 225 students in our district, so I continue to draw your attention to that, because while most school districts, the numbers are stable or declining, because of the housing market, it continues to bloom here and blossom in Monroe. Our out-of-district placements, right now, we're in a very good place. You see, we're lower than we were last year. It is still early in the year. This data is subject to change, but that information is enclosed for your review. The home instruction list is also provided for you, along with the fire drills and lockdown drills. Our administrators will be going through a training tomorrow, actually, on new procedures as it relates to security procedures that we have to implement. And moving on to the personnel report, Madam Board President and members of the Board of Education, it is recommended by the superintendent that personnel items A through, lost my notes, T be approved by roll call vote.
So moved.
Mr. Kaufman and Mr. Braverman? Are there any comments or questions for the superintendent? Mr. Masters?
Can you just clarify L?
Each school, each year, each school is responsible for developing a school goals committee, and that is a part of a negotiated item with the MTEA. These are additional members who have been added to the Oak Tree team.
Anyone else? Mr. Leary?
Looking at the enrollment statistics, we have a serious problem in front of us. That we're at 1783. This building is rated at 1800, and with good scheduling, you can go to 2000. If we continue to go at 122 students a year, we're going to be in deep, deep doo-doo.
Thank you. Anyone else from the board? And we'll have a roll call, Mr. Gorski.
Mr. Braverman?
Yes.
Mrs. Ferroni?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman? Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Tesler?
Yes.
Mrs. Koloponowicz?
Yes.
Madam Board President, personnel items A through T passes.
Thank
And
you.
moving on to board action items, Madam Board President, members of the Board of Education, it is recommended by the superintendent that board action items A through I be approved by roll call vote.
Mr. Kaufman?
Second.
Mr. Masters? Are there any questions for Dr. Hamilton? Mr. Klein?
I'm ahead of myself. No, I'm right. I see we already had one of our high school students do damage to property in the school, amounts to $100. Now, the question that I have, that I think I've already answered, is I believe in our policy, the student is responsible for that $100.
That is correct.
So I would expect that the student or his parents are going to pay the $100.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Then we'll have a roll call, Mr. Gorski.
Mr. Braverman.
Yes.
Mrs. Ferroni.
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman. Mr. Klein.
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
Mr. Masters.
Yes.
Mr. Tesler.
Yes.
Mrs. Koloponowicz.
Yes.
Madam Board President, board action items A through I passes.
That concludes the superintendent's report.
So we will go on to the business administrator's report. Mr. Gorski?
Madam Board President and members of the Monroe Township Board of Education, it is recommended that board action items A through Q be approved by consent roll call.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Braverman, Mr. Kaufman. Are there any questions from members of the board to Mr. Gorski? Seeing none, we will have a roll call.
Mr. Braverman.
Yes.
Mrs. Ferroni.
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
Mr. Klein.
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
Mr. Masters.
Yes.
Mr. Tesler.
Yes.
Mrs. Koloponowicz.
Yes.
Madam Board President, board action items A through Q passes.
Okay, thank you very much. Next on the agenda, Board President's Report. I'm going to keep mine very short. We had a governance committee meeting, members of the Board of Education, and a couple of the things that we had talked about has to do with the budget and how we need to, the board will be starting a conversation about what we want to see in the budget next year, how we want to go about the development of the budget, and I believe we're going to be having a budget advisory committee with members of the public that will get involved in that conversation.
Microphone.
You want my
You need it, so the
They
camera can
can't
pick
hear
it up.
me. I'm sorry. And then the other thing that we had talked about was we're going to be continuing the fight for state aid. We're going to be following up on the meetings that were held in July in Trenton, and we want to just make sure that our voices are still heard, and we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop trying to do what we need to get for the citizens and the staff and the students of Monroe. So that is my board president's report. And at this time, we will go to committee reports. Is anyone Mr. Tesler, have a committee report?
Thank you very much. On Monday, we had a personnel committee, and the following subjects were discussed. Number one, central office reorganization. There will be a restructuring of some duties among the central office staff in order to respond to some of the new laws associated with coordination of health benefits and other desk assignments that have changed as a result of growth in the district. Number two, Mike updated the committee on the status of implementation of the new health benefits law. Number three, we discussed putting parameters in place to ensure that there are appropriate trained staff available when the performing arts facilities are used by outside groups. Number four, Dr. Hamilton gave us an update on the EE4NJ grant, which I believe he just mentioned tonight as well. And number five, the committee also reviewed a few other personnel-related matters, including a sidebar agreement for the AVID coordinators. Thank you.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Tesler? Mr. Kaufman? No? You must have a committee report.
I do.
Okay. Go
Okay.
ahead.
The curriculum committee met this evening, and thanks to Tom, we'll readdress some of the things we talked about. As we move forward throughout the years, and future, the curriculum committee is going to be pushing the administration very heavily to do a very effective implementation of the iPad strategy that we've put forward. In addition to the cost savings that I mentioned earlier with this high school math program that's going to affect both the high school and the middle school, we are aggressively moving forward with things like professional development, obviously security, usage policies and and things of that nature to make sure that it's one thing to have the technology and it's another thing to make sure we're using it effectively. The idea here is we need to position, as mentioned by Renee earlier, we need to be in a place where we are positioning our students to be competitive when they leave Monroe Township High School, regardless of where they go, whether they're going into the military, whether they're going into college, or they're going into the trades. Technology is a platform by which they are going to not only be very comfortable with, but to be able to learn and teach themselves as they move forward. If you work for any kind of company, you know that money for education pretty much doesn't exist in industry anymore. And if you're looking to get ahead in whatever industry you're in, you either have to pay for it yourself or you have to be able to find an electronic way to get trained on something that you need to know. And the idea here is if we can't generate or purchase the product electronically, then we're going to be very aggressive in trying to build the content as we move forward, because we just have to, it just has to be. So we're staging ourselves in a very good place to be able to do that and grow the project as we move forward. I'm going to pass some of these items over to Jeff because they're kind of technical. They deal with AVID and a club that we had a presentation tonight. So I don't want to misstate anything. Has also to do with New Jersey Pass. Just one other comment. We did go through several curriculum items and approve these items as well relative to social skills and some of these other courses that were part of the agenda this evening. So Jeff, if you just can be brief on some of these things so people know what's going on.
Okay. We talked about the new Algebra 1 textbook adoption, so the curriculum committee approved that, which included a free pass at the high school level for 1 year from Pearson because of their willingness to partner with us and realization that we are leading the way with the technology in definitely the state and throughout the nation. We spoke, Dr. Hamilton mentioned the acceptance of funds. You did mention that, correct? For Spark, which is a phys ed and health curriculum that a national organization would like to bring to New Jersey, and because Forest Gate supports Danica Corporation, they thought what better place to start than with Monroe Township, which was awesome. So they provided us funds to help us implement in 2 of our schools with both Spark and First Tee, which First Tee is a program that helps to introduce golf to children at an early age as a way to increase physical fitness and awareness. So we are happy to receive those funds and partner with Spark and First Tee to move forward, and we'll be reporting out as we move forward in that partnership. There's a club at the high school, a service learning club that 2 of our teachers presented that was piloted for a year, and now, as per our procedures, will be implemented full-time. It's the Animo Club. It's a non-profit club created last year, and there are 75 students already in that club, so we approved that to move forward. The 2 AVID items were just an overview of the middle school program, which is allowing them to receive the related arts because of the restrictions of the schedule, and introducing a stipend, a small stipend for someone to coordinate the tutorology, which is basically partnering with universities and colleges to bring in college kids to work with our students, which is in line with the AVID model. Lastly, we talked briefly about the New Jersey Pass being an effective assessment tool for our children, and the bottom line is that it has not been updated since the year 2000. The company has no intention in updating it to the new standards and the Common Core, so it seems to have outlived its life shelf in Monroe Township, and respectfully, we're not going to continue to administer an assessment that's not relevant to our learning for our children. So this is official notice. We are no longer using that, and we will be creating our own assessments to match up with the Common Core and use that as a barometer for where our kids place as they move along the early primary years. And lastly, there is about 18 curriculum documents that were approved and presented to the curriculum committee. This is a culmination of revision and writing that took place in the summer. I think that was semi-brief, right?
And that's why I didn't do it.
All right, cool.
Oh, that's good. So that concludes the curriculum?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Masters?
I'll keep it short. Thanks, Jeff. We had a Buildings and Grounds meeting last night. I'll go through them if you have any questions. We denied a request to donate a shed due to possible issues with security. The business office is fighting additional charges from the move. They're vigorously fighting the additional charges. We're installing new lot lighting at Brookside School, safety lighting, due to some concerns that came up when they removed their trailers, that there was some dark parking lots out there. Estimated to cost $25,000 to $35,000. We accepted a donation from Equitable for a TV that's going in the school somewhere. I don't know exactly. Teacher's Lounge. We're still discussing parking at the administration building. There's some issues with not enough parking spaces. We discussed issues with the outside use of building requests and what we're going to do for issues that come up in the future. Hold on. We denied a request for late-run transportation drop-offs into private developments. We discussed Applegarth, the mold remediation, and some of the minor issues that we're going to be taking care of. That is on task to have the mold remediation done by winter recess. And also we discussed graduation, this year's graduation. And we decided due to size constraints, logistics, and the recommendation of the staff that we're going to keep it at the Sun Center, that's what it's called now, PNC?
Sunbank Arena.
Sunbank Arena. And with that, I'd like to make a motion, if you would.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to have the Monroe Township High School's graduation ceremony on June 22nd, 2012 at 3 p.m. at the Sunbank Center Arena.
I second it.
Second by Mr. Leary.
Yes.
Okay, any comments or questions from Mr. Masters? Okay, then, do we need a roll call on that?
No.
No. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Then the high school graduation this year will be held on Friday, June 22nd at 3 o'clock p.m. at the Sunbank Arena in Trenton. Does that conclude your report?
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Okay, anyone else have a committee report? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to other Board of Education business. Is there any member of the board, Mr. Tessler, who has board business?
Thank you. Just another resource if anybody would like to educate them more about iPads in general. If anybody knows me, I'm a big technology geeky type guy. There is a podcast, a weekly podcast that's available on the internet or your iPad called iPad Today. If you just Google iPad Today, you'll be able to find it. They give you just general things and new apps that are going on every week. There was a podcast done of this, there was an episode of this podcast done in September, if you look it up, which is geared toward back-to-school apps. And they mention a few, some interesting ones that, and when I find things like this, I always forward this information to Dr. Gorman, so it's something that maybe the school would be interested in the future. Two in particular would pertain to textbooks. There's two competing, it seems like textbooks, I guess, publishing conglomerates that are out there. One they mentioned in the podcast, which is traditional textbooks, and one which was putting together interactive textbooks. A more interactive approach for textbooks. So that sounded very interesting and something that those two companies were moving forward as more publishers and more textbooks get online. They also mentioned a few apps. One in particular, it was called Algebra Touch. It was a visual equation solver where you can put in your own equations, or actually would teach you through lessons on basic equation solving for algebra. My daughter's in 9th grade, and when she started, she was having a little trouble. I actually bought that for her for my iPad, and she has been using it quite often to help her with her homework. So that was just another example of something useful on the iPad. But just Google iPad Today. There's a lot of resources out there, so if you just want to be more educated and just kind of follow, you don't have to listen to it every week. It's a video podcast. It works on your computer too. It's just another resource to help everybody educate themselves. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, anyone, Mr. Klein?
This is probably going to be the last update on this issue because I'm just hitting concrete walls. To update everybody here, they know that I've sent letters out to the Chief Justice, 2 letters, never got an answer. I've sent 3 to 4 letters to Governor Christie. I had gotten an answer on the first one. I've spoken to him personally at town hall meetings, but basically both of them seem to have turned their back on Monroe Township when it comes to receiving our fair share in state aid. $348 doesn't cover. We see now this year, the population went up 225 students. If you take the Conversion Act that ended August 31st, you have Hovnanian, which was turned down, and then they came back with a lesser quantity of family homes. At 126 homes, at 2 children per home is 252. And then the zoning board passed Renaissance properties, 130. PRCs converting over to family homes, that's another 260. So you have 512 potential new students coming into the school. In my letters, especially the last letters, I discussed that they're looking at, reasons that we get for not getting our fair share. Let's hit that first. Is we have a large amount of retired residents. Therefore, they're not adding to the school population, they're adding to your property taxes. But what these imbeciles, and there's no other word for them, that are sitting in Trenton and the federal government, what they don't see is that these adult communities, the older ones like a Clearbrook, a Renaissance, Concordia, these were homes at Concordia that was selling at the prime, resales of $300,000. You can go there now and you can purchase them for $108,000 to $125,000. Renaissance, not Renaissance, Rossmore.
I'll give you a story.
Anyway, theirs is down to like 11,000. So what they're saying is they don't look at the Conversion Act that the legislature approved to protect the developers. They don't look at the new developments going on presently in Monroe Township, adding families. That's one of their excuses. Another excuse they use is the value of our homes. Well, if that is the case, then I want them going into Clearbrook, Rossmore, the older communities, and say, okay, those houses are going down in price, we're entitled to more money. Whatever excuse they come up with is bogus, okay? Let me see where else I'm going. The hurt is that you have elected politicians that we vote for, that when they're running, they state that they're out there to help us, what they're going to do for us. And you want to know something? They're a bunch of liars. They don't do anything for us. When you look at the state and you look at the federal government, and that's what hurts. We are being punished for no other reason than stupidity. $348 doesn't cover it, and I don't even know, did we add in the 225 students when we came up at 348?
No.
Okay, so now we're getting less than 348 when Old Bridge is getting upwards of $4,000 a student. Okay, so I don't know how else you can handle this. I've done what I can do. They're doing what they can do. It's all the parents. It's the PTAs. It's the parents. This thing should have been acted upon when I started 3 years ago. We're getting nowhere fast, and that's the end of that. And it'll probably be the last time I speak about it, which I know you'll be happy about.
Anyone else from the board?
Data point.
Mr. Leary?
Give me the microphone. The education business in New Jersey is about a $20 billion a year game, and about $7.8 billion of that is state aid. And there are about 1.2 million students. Now, if you do just simple division, turns out per student value should be $6,406. Even Old Bridge, which we complain about, they're getting shortchanged. And you look at our not too far away communities, like New Brunswick, it's $16,000 per student. Perth Amboy, $16,000 per student. And we're sitting at the 348 that Mark's talking about. Something is rotten, that's all I'm going to say.
And just to add to that.
Mr. Klein?
That is just the state aid. What about what they're getting in federal aid? You know what we get in federal aid? What was it, $82,000 or so? That's what we get in federal aid, where they're getting hundreds of millions of dollars in those other school districts.
Okay, anyone else from the board? Okay, at this time, we will go into closed session. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Township of Monroe hereby moves to go into closed session in accordance with Sunshine Law, Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, NJSA 10:4-6 through 10:4-21, to discuss the following subjects: student matters, harassment, intimidation, and bullying reports, and I want to add the superintendent's evaluation. The discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public at such time as the matters have been resolved. A motion and a second?
So moved.
Second. Mr. Kaufman, Mr. Leary, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? At this time, the board will move into closed session. Okay, at this time, the board will move back into public session. And Mr. Tesler?
Yes, like to make a motion that the Board of Education give Dr. Hamilton a 2% increase for the 2011-2012 school year in accomplishment of achieving his school goals and to conclude his evaluation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Leary. Any comments or questions? If not, we will have a roll call.
Mr. Braverman.
Yes.
Mrs. Ferroni.
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman.
Have to be reclused.
So noted. Mr. Klein.
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
Mr. Masters.
Yes.
Mr. Tesler.
Yes.
Mrs. Kolpanowicz.
Yes.
Madam Board President, motion passes.
Thank you very much. Okay, at this time, we will go back to the public forum. Anyone from the audience wishing to speak, please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Kim Schaubs, 2 Horseshoe Court, Monroe. I attended the Grounds Building Transportation Committee meeting last night. I have a picture I'd like to show to you that when you denied my children access to the bus to be dropped off in appropriate of what the danger now that will lie with my kids being left in the dark. So
we can leave it up here. Thank you. It's okay.
that's what the area will look like now that my kids will be like that. Also, at the meeting, you requested that I see Mr. Feist. I did go see him, and he said that the developer was in compliance with the state coordinates of the RSIS, Residential Site Improvement Standards, when the development was built. And he basically told me this is a Board of Ed issue. It's not a township. So I don't know what else to go from that. But in addition, I received a letter also from Mr. Gorski, and I have a couple questions I'd like to ask him. First being that you had said that the Millstone River Preserve is not considered a hazardous route. So my question is, what deems a hazardous route in this community? Because based on your pamphlet that I have, the bus safety pamphlet, I'm a little confused. So I'd like you to answer that for me, please.
The State Department of Education defines hazardous route. It is not entirely specific, as it is a subjective decision made by the Board of Education. Some criteria that goes into it is high speeds of traffic, no sidewalks, poor illumination, bridges, a sharp bend in the road would make a hazardous consideration. It's not any one of these, it's the aggregate of all of them as determined by the school district.
Okay, but just so you know that your hazardous route here, that's deemed from your policies of the Board of Ed, the 4 that you have is no sidewalks, speed limits, volume of traffic traveling, and roadway widths. So
beg your pardon, what?
On roadway widths?
Widths, yes.
So based on this criteria, from what you have in your pamphlet, my development has 2 of these. One being no sidewalks, and the road widths are very narrow, they're 22 feet wide. So that was a little, I'm not really sure. The other thing is you say that, in the letter, that the distance from the stop to the door was state recommended distance of 2 miles for elementary and middle school. But in here, for your transportation cutoff, it actually reads, transportation for students should be predicted on grade level and the distance a child resides from the school attended, not from a bus stop. It's actually from the school's distance where they reside. Go ahead.
That's correct. That's a bus pamphlet. The items listed there for hazardous route examples are not all-inclusive.
Okay. But this is what you give out in our, when we get our transportation route.
Correct. It's an abridged
So is there additional information that I need to be given so I understand this more correctly?
And according to the New Jersey Department of Education, a child at the high school grade levels 9 to 12 can walk 2.5 miles to school before the school has to provide transportation.
Okay, but that is not, I'm sorry, go ahead.
They also recommend that as a guideline for districts to judge from the bus stop to the home.
Mm-hmm. But my development has no sidewalks, so you're forcing my children to walk in the street and not be able to get off roadways, and it's dangerous and they could get hit by a car. But I guess that doesn't matter.
In the aggregate of all of the criteria, your route was determined not hazardous last year when it was requested to be reviewed by Ingrid Ritano.
Mm-hmm.
It was also evaluated as non-hazardous when Dr. Hamilton and I went out a second time last year, and it was also deemed non-hazardous this year.
Okay, let me ask you this, why?
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 Because in the aggregate of those considerations, you don't have high-speed traffic flow.
I could. Do you ever see anybody drive down my street? Yes, it does happen.
Your street is a...
Long and very narrow and
it's
winding.
a private...
It's not private, it's public.
Sign right on it, it says private.
It's not, that does not say private. It's an enclave private. It's a description for the site inside there that the builder put out there to build. It's not private, it's public. The township will take care of that road, will plow that road, will maintain that road, the grass, the trees alongside of it. So it is not a private road.
Okay, again, in the aggregate, I still determine that your route is not hazardous according to the definition. Now, the district had accommodated you by taking the pickups and the drop-offs to door for every home in your development.
Yes, and I agree, I appreciate that.
The request then expanded to late-run courtesy busing. The district has a clear policy and practice that we only provide cluster late-run busings with the exception of basic skills at the elementary school level.
Okay, and you're still sticking with that because I am telling you there is areas within my area that is not possible, that cluster busing happens. It becomes door to door because there's locations in those areas like Gravel Hill, Federal Road, Old Church Road, you name it down there, that those kids are dropped off in front of their houses because there is no sidewalks and there's nowhere to cluster children to be dropped off to walk from those locations.
Not the district policy unless if it pertains to basic skills.
And I'm just telling you that also this development is unique, that it's not like any other place in the district. So how can you say that this is based on a district-wide thing when nothing else like this exists in this district?
One final comment, it is unique, and I share your concerns about hunters possibly being in the area, and about no sidewalks, and about poor illumination or inadequate illumination that your builder had provided you with. But those are not concerns that the district can bear on our shoulders by breaking from policy and practice for late-run busing. We don't have the means in the budget to accommodate that, and what we've asked you to accept is consistent with all the other parents in the district.
What I'm trying to...
At this time, I think the conversation would need to be, make an appointment to come in and talk to Mr. Gorski and Dr. Hamilton. You came before the Buildings and Grounds Committee of the Board of Education last night. The committee did not support your request and felt that it warranted no further consideration following our district policies, the law of the state, in regard to late-run courtesy busing. If you feel like you would like to continue the conversation, I would suggest that you make an appointment and talk to the Transportation Department and the superintendent.
Okay, can I ask just one last question, though? Because in his letter, the last part I wanted to ask is, hazardous busing does not apply to late-run buses, is that correct?
That's correct.
So basically, you were saying that you would put any child at risk at any location? That doesn't matter?
I was legally defining hazardous busing as it relates to courtesy late-run drop-offs. There is no correlation.
In courtesy, we're still paying for it. So it's not like you're doing me a favor like it's free.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Anyone from the public?
My name is Maria Lepre, 61 Ashmole Avenue. I'm here because I'm an Aflac representative, and in regards to the Chapter 78 law, as of all school boards of education have to have an FSA implemented as of January 1. I have tried to contact the business administrator. I understand you guys are understaffed. Aflac representatives as a whole can be very annoying, and I understand that. I've spoken with your broker, G.R. Murray, Joe Colombo. I've spoken with him, and he has told me that the reason why I'm not being heard is because Aflac is annoying and because of the issues of having a payroll slot given. I wanted to make it aware to the board members that I can implement the FSA at no cost to the Board of Education. I'm sure you've been in discussions and gotten notices from other brokers and other people, other companies as in regards to the cost of the administration of the FSAs. They have this initial setup fees. They have a monthly per participant monthly rate, as well as a monthly minimum. I, as an Aflac representative and as a taxpayer and a student of parent of a freshman student, would absorb the cost of the FSAs in order to save the Board of Education some money. That could be reverted back to our kids. I'm doing this with other school districts in the area. I'm working with Spotswood schools. Along with this comes I carry the administrative burden. I do all the education, get all the paperwork signed. As in regards to the payroll slot that I was told is an issue, payroll administration would take 5 minutes a month. I would sit down, I develop all the spreadsheets for the payroll person to input pre-tax, post-tax. And I would come and sit and do them with the payroll person, open the first couple bills online, we bill in arrears. I just don't understand, I just wanted to come and present the information to the Board of Education and ask you to please consider allowing me to administer the FSAs at no cost. Along with that, I would offer the Aflac course supplements. It's an accident policy, a cancer program. The employees would volunteer to elect these programs, but the other school districts find them very affordable, and I have good enrollment. So I just wanted to make, present myself to the Board of Education. Sorry, I'm nervous.
Thank you.
I appreciate your solicitation. I had never heard from you personally. I never received any correspondence from you. What we have had in the past is Aflac call our business office literally 10 times a day. Different people all day long, and our secretarial staff was very effective in discontinuing that practice because it was rude and intrusive.
Oh, yes.
Last night at the Building Grounds Transportation Committee and the Finance Committee meeting, our flex spending plan requirement was addressed by the committee, and it has such been satisfied.
Okay.
It's being handled. It was prepared by our board attorney.
Okay.
And it's being managed by our insurance carrier.
Okay.
And the cost is minimal, and it is a professional service
Okay.
contract.
All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Anyone else from the public?
Michelle Arminio, 9 Nathaniel Street. Page 8 and 9, NO&P. There's stipends for, one is technology resource position, so that's an additional stipend, and O&P are clubs. Are these after-school activities that are being paid for, or are they within the school day schedule?
These are after-school activities, or after school or beyond the customary workday.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, page 14, item 10, in the bill list, A, B, and C, are those all separate costs, or is that in the $12 million for the month of September? A is 12 million, B is, what is that, over 3 million? Page 14 and 15, A, B, and C.
The list A, B, and C.
Are those all separate costs?
Are they all separate costs?
Or
They are separate bill lists for separate checking accounts from separate referendums or general fund expenditures.
So A is not the total of the others, is it?
A is the custodial general bill list. That is.
Is that the operating costs for the month?
Yes, let me reference the total.
So what I'm saying.
The total is $12,388,164.29. That is the general fund custodian bill list. It does represent operating costs for the most part.
So in addition, we have 3 million and then the other 117,000
Correct.
for B and C. So it's
That
over
is
and
correct.
above.
To elaborate on your question, the 3 million is Fund 34. That is the high school referendum. That is the capital projects fund. And for the month of September, the total of the bills was $3,372,112.85.
And is that going to be a monthly cost, or is that the end of the construction cost?
We've talked about this before. This is a varying total every month, depending on what bills were paid. So it is subject to variation.
Okay. But it's
I
soon,
will-
that fund will soon be depleted, is that correct?
Yes. Now, the custodial bill list, the first one that you referenced, 12 million, was a little large this month because it had according to our debt service schedule, it had a large debt service requirement of over $3 million that contributed to it.
Okay. Since the flood, Irene, and it was my understanding that the state requires that some of the children displaced from the flood are entitled to busing, how many of those children have been availed of that?
All of our students that have been displaced have been accounted for and are being transported to our school if they are outside of our community.
But from the Board of Ed?
Yes, ma'am.
How many of those children?
There were 15 in total, as I recall, and we have 7 that are outside of our district. The other 8 are.
And we're supplying the busing and transportation?
We are.
Okay, and can I ask one more question?
Yes.
Okay. The closed session resolution, again, I'm on page 10, item 14, does seem to be a little shy of the required resolution statement that is supposed to be put before you go into the closed resolution. So now we hear that after 3 times that you've been talking about a raise in the salary of the superintendent. So before that, we had no idea, and I think under the closed session resolution, it should have been a little bit more documented. So I'm going to look into that and probably have to present something at the next meeting. But the question I have, well, this has nothing to do personally with Dr. Hamilton. It has more to do with costs and the financial environment in our country, let's say. Is there not an intact 5-year contract with Dr. Hamilton at this time?
Dr. Hamilton's contract in 2010 was extended into 2015, and the law went into effect after his contract was signed. Therefore, he is grandfathered into the laws before the...
But prior to this, was he granted, contractually, was he granted the cap, up to the cap every year?
No, he was grandfathered in before the cap, and after the cap, his contract states that he will get up to a 2% increase from 2010 into 2015.
So this is another 2% in addition to that?
No, this is, the board had a discussion.
Agreeing to that. So you're
Right.
going to the cap, in other words?
In accordance to his contract.
Okay. And is it for this year or for
It
the
is for
extent?
this year.
Just for this year and every year? Okay.
It is just for this year.
And I want to remember that the first year Dr. Hamilton was here, he did not take an increase, I believe. But has this negated that increase at this point? Are we now really sort of paying back that increase that was not gotten that first year?
That's a very subjective question.
Well, how about financially? I mean, what was the difference in the increase that wasn't taken the first year based on economic circumstances?
Are you asking for an average of the
Sure.
of the
if
term?
you-
Do you recall the
No, it might
first
have
year
to be
was
something we have to look at.
Okay. I mean, because I don't know that economics has changed, and I know that Dr. Hamel is doing a wonderful job, and I'm grateful for his service. But it's, again, it has to do with finances.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Okay, seeing no one, our next scheduled Public Board of Education meeting will be held on Wednesday, November 16th, 2011, 7 o'clock p.m. at the high school. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Mr. Leary, Mr. Klein, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Meeting is adjourned.